Hello, everybody. My name is Matt Radolec. I'll be the host and the moderator for the Data First Forum today. I've been with Varonis for a little bit over 7 years, and my roles and responsibilities encompass a lot of our customer-facing security teams, as well as some of our sales engineers. I'm joined today by two absolute rock stars in cybersecurity, and I'll give them each a chance to introduce themselves, and then we'll get the conversation going. So, Bryan, you want to start?
Sure. So I'm in the CISO at Flagship Credit for the last 9, coming up on 10 years now. Before that, I was with Comcast. So I've been doing security for about 25 years now. I also do instruction on the side, so that's my side hustle. Basically, I'm responsible for everything and anything security related for the organization. So it's been interesting how we built up from basically nothing and a couple firewalls to a full security suite, and now AI is just another one of those tools that we're looking at bringing on.
Awesome. Awesome. We're really happy to have you here and share all that experience with our audience today. Vince, you want to go next?
Yeah, hi everybody. Great to see so many people on today. Happy to be here. Vince Aimutis. I'm our CISO and Director of Information Services at Federated Insurance in Owatonna, Minnesota, about an hour south of the Twin Cities. Been here 18 years. Not always in security. Started as a software engineer, slinging code. As soon as they realized I shouldn't be writing code, they moved into a project manager role and kind of analyst work for a handful of years. Really built out a lot of our security program with our teams here over those years as a PM, and started leading those teams about 6-7 years ago now. But in this broader role, oversee our infrastructure, our middleware platform teams, in addition to the cybersecurity program here at Federated.
That's awesome. It's really great to have you here too, Vince. And just for everybody in our audience sake, we're going to keep an eye on the chat as well as the Q&A all throughout the Data First Forum today. So if there's something that you really want to ask either Bryan or Vince or myself, the best way to get it answered is to put it in the Q&A. But if you throw it in the chat, our moderators are looking through it too. Well, why don't we actually launch a poll really quick just to see if everybody out there knows how to use our polls. And I think our first poll is going to be a question on how your organization is using Gen AI. So we're curious to see, you guys doing some Gen AI, maybe building your own, thinking about AI, or maybe, nothing going on with AI tools in your environment. We're really curious to see what your feedback is, and we'll give you guys about a minute to answer that. And then we'll dive into my first question for our panelists. All right, let's see it. Is your organization currently using AI? It looks like we've got an overwhelming amount, 44% are thinking about it. About 40% are using AI as a service. 10% are building their own AI. And 7% of our responders have no plans for using AI tools. Well, I can tell you that we definitely handpicked our experts today based on some of the things they are doing with AI. So they're probably in those categories. And that's what I'll start with. And Bryan, I'm going to toss the first question to you. Why do you think people are so excited about AI?
I mean, it's the next evolutionary step. I've been around long enough to, when I started, it was the mainframe days. Then we went into the personal computer and then the data center. And now we sort of come full circle back around to the cloud is now the linkage that puts everything together in the technology world. And I think AI is going to be the next layer that sort of builds on top of that. We're all interconnected. We're all using API-based systems that keep our businesses flowing and moving and doing things. Where to the point now where we couldn't live without it. No one's going to go back to the old paper tubes, slinging paper around days. That's not happening. So AI is going to be the next step of that. So the AI is going to be what the internet was to personal computers, 20, 25 years ago. And it's going to be the what everyone uses in the future. And I think it's going to be where everyone goes to. If you're not planning on using AI in the next 5 to 10 years, your company's probably going to go the way of the dodo and not be around at that time. You're going to get swallowed up, or something's going to replace it. Because as always, it's better, faster, cheaper, and that's what AI promises in all three.
Yeah, I really like that. And I'm going to comment on that in a second, Brian. What about you, Vince? Why do you think people are so excited about AI and kind of how it's transforming things?
Sure. Yeah, I mean artificial intelligence has been used for quite some time now at a lot of organizations. But what's most exciting is the capabilities have started to just become mainstream. And as more people have learned what generative AI is, as the tools have become available to people, you just the masses now are seeing the kind of lift it can get. And undoubtedly it can offer increased efficiency. It can help you make decisions faster in the right use cases for less creative types. It can kind of open your mind. It can get you over a writer's block. It can supplement materials with more creative materials. There's just so many applicable use cases that have become easier and easier to use over the last couple of years. And so with the masses getting excited about it, with the vendors and products pitching AI this, AI that, I think you're just seeing this huge level of excitement just about the value it can offer.
Yeah, before we move on to our next poll, I wanted to touch on something that Brian said because I actually really share in that opinion that we're at a point now where if you're a knowledge worker and you're not using Gen AI, I think you're already behind. People in the software development world, coders and those in finance have been using generative AI tools even before Copilot for Microsoft 365 became a big thing. We've had Copilot for GitHub, we've had Copilot for Microsoft Excel. So there's already been gains to had even before this huge wave around the Office productivity suite. And now the next frontier is really about expanding this type of Gen AI or even AI experience to other parts of the workforce and of the ecosystem. We see companies building their own LLMs. We see organizations using AI as a service or even embedding AI in their products, a lot like Varonis and a lot of other security vendors are doing. So why don't we launch the next poll, Haley, and let's ask our audience. Specifically when we think about just Gen AI as opposed to that broader AI topic, is your org using Gen AI, or are you doing it already, or maybe planning on it, or maybe not planning on doing it at all? Really curious to just get a thumb in the air at where everyone is at for that. So, oh wow, almost half of our respondents are already using Gen AI, and almost another 100 are preparing to use it, so about 40%, whereas only about 20% of those out there have no plans to do it yet. So it does seem like the general trend is on track that a lot of people are leaning into and using Gen AI. And I think one of the things that comes up a lot in conversations about Gen AI is how do you treat the associated risks? And maybe a little bit more about like what are those risks while still getting the benefits of moving forward. And Brian, I'll also throw this one at you, and Vince, I promise we'll go first with you on the next question.
Yeah, so the risk is just again another expansion of what we're already looking at with our identity access management. So what does the Gen AI and the people that are using that Gen AI have access to? So if you've got theoretically AI across the board, you want your people in accounting looking at what the people in risk have, or vice versa, or people in HR looking what people in technology have. So if you had a huge data lake and you just put everything into it and everyone had access to it, I don't think you'd be terribly happy about that. You'd want to keep your silos in some cases, but at the same time, maybe you can get some insights by having that data lake and no restrictions. So that's as IT professionals and security professionals, we're gonna have to deal with of what do we give people access to and what do we give the AI access to compared to what they have today. And maybe there are some benefits to having everyone have access to everything and just being an open source or of data. But at the same time, if you knew how to write those queries, those AI queries in a certain way, can I find out what the CEO is making on a salary, or the person sitting next to me, what their salary is, and why are they making $10,000 more than I am, and that can cause a lot of problems. So it's that balance that we're gonna have to strike between everyone knowing everything and the silos. And for security, silos are going to win out, but then of course the people using that information are going to say, well, I need access to everything. So we're going to have to find where the middle point is between keeping everyone's privacy and company productivity.
Sure, sure. And Vince, what about you? What do you think about that? Like, how do you treat these risks but still get the benefits and the perks?
Yeah, sure. It's really it's also changed the way we just think about data security as well. It's a you need to allow time to be methodical in how you address these risks, bring people along in the discussion as well. I think to understand the data, how the data is being used in the models is so critically important for addressing the various types of risks you're going to get in utilizing certain Gen AI use cases. Just knowing how you're going to govern that data, govern its usage, understand any bias that can occur from a regulatory standpoint is just increasingly important as well. Making sure people have access to the right data or are pulling from the right data sets to kind of scope in on whatever the Gen AI's use case is. I think it's also important just not let it be a security thing in a department of no as you treat these risks. We get a bad rap in security of just blocking everything and always be preventative. You have an opportunity here to provide education and awareness to your user base, whether that be your customers or your business partners, or what have you. There's an opportunity here to start with education and security awareness and get them to appreciate having a security mindset and utilizing these types of tools. So that's going to help. That's going to allow people to get the benefits of it while still your team is addressing the risks. And then treating the risks on the security team, just understanding what your existing tools can offer, understanding where your program is at, and from a maturity perspective, there's a number of different ways to address different types of risks that can occur in Gen AI usage. You can go data governance, you can go network security and understanding what people are putting in to the browser and things like that. Just understanding your use cases, modeling those threats that are coming from those use cases, and then leveraging your existing stack or understanding where you need to grow your program to address the various types of risks that could occur.
Yeah, and I really like something that you said there about not being the department of no, because I really see this opportunity. A lot of times in security people are tinkerers. We experiment to find the flaws in systems that need to be secured. And I think in a lot of ways, AI and Gen AI represents an opportunity for security to lead by example and actually show others how there is benefit, there is ROI from using these tools, and that it can be done safely. So I really see a lot of potential for security teams to really lead the charge from an AI and a Gen AI standpoint and find those ways to do it safely. I also wanted to ask you guys one question from one of our audience members that I really liked. And John, I'm going to try to pronounce your last name. I think it's Nakaza or Nakaza. If I mispronounce it, I'm sorry about that. But John asked the question, if you're not building your own AI or LLM, are you concerned with private corporate information going into the large public engines? And either one of you guys can go first on that one.
Yes and no. I guess like so many things, it depends, right? Like I think that's where the understanding the importance of it's so critically important to understand the use cases. It's understanding the engines that it is being put into. One of the approaches we've taken around here is to kind of evangelize the walled garden type of approach. We spent some time researching and understanding what Microsoft Copilot, ChatGPT, some of the other Gen AI models do, how they work, what data they store, and we kind of settled in on one particular tool to encourage our employees to experiment, play, understand what it can do, get some business value out of it, but do it in our walled garden where we're approaching it from a perspective of knowing that data is not leaving our circle per se, but we're still able to leverage the magic and power of the LLM.
Sure. And Bryan, anything to add?
Yeah, we're taking a similar approach where, again, we're allowing the AI tools to sort of guide us and use its knowledge base, but we're not allowing our data to be used to train that model. So we're sort of, we're like the people that consume X or Twitter posts but don't really put anything out. We're cheating the system a little bit that way, but for now we feel it's necessary because as we've said before, we don't know, we don't know.
Sure.
We hate to enter in something to an LLM now, and then 5 years from now, 10 years from now, find out, oh, that's discoverable. That's, if you write a certain query, you can do it. You can bring that data back and expose the company or our customers to the world that we announced, and we've got a data leak because of that, something that we did, a mistake we made years and years ago. Hopefully I'll be retired and living on the beach somewhere, and it won't be my problem.
Because of how well you adopted AI. Yeah, exactly.
That's the long-term thinking that we have to think about now, because as we know, any data that's out there never really gets deleted. So we're saying, all right, for now we're being greedy, hanging on to our own data and not sharing, just to make sure that down the road that doesn't become an issue.
And I think back to a story that we covered on another Varonis web series called State of Cybercrime recently, where a AI company had done AI image likeness by combing the open internet for images. So you got to think that 5 years from now, there's going to be AIs that combed all the AIs they could for data that maybe your company submitted, or your organization submitted with no intention of it getting ingested into another Pac-Man and spit back out in the form of, in this case, facial recognition. But these are the types of things that come to mind as we navigate this. Now, I think this is a great transition to our next question. And Vince, I'm going to pose this one to you first. And that's, what policies have you put in place to enable Gen AI in your environment? And what measures should organizations be putting in place? This is a huge question from our audience members so far.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, tons of questions coming in related to this. I'll try to cover what I've read here, but
sure.
What we did foundationally is what I think a lot of orgs have done, but if not, I'll go through it, because it's kind of your standard things. Putting acceptable use policies in place, educating your board, your leadership, and even across the company, employees about what Gen AI is, how it can be used. Again, building that security aware culture. We created an AI COE, Center of Expertise. It's chaired by our enterprise architect, but has representation really across different business units. In IT, we have security and app dev and support. Again, our enterprise architect, but we have legal, compliance, and various business units sitting in on that as well, enterprise risk in addition to that. That group is really responsible for understanding a lot of the use cases that are being asked for across our business. And so they can evaluate then a little bit more how those models are using the data. Are they using the data? We can ensure that proper due diligence and third-party risk is gone through on those, even maybe a little tighter than we would normally do, since everyone knows third-party risk is or can be chaos in and of itself. So that's what our AI COE is doing. They're curating a list of things that we can explore and get value out of. And then finally, we've used features in applications once we receive that kind of approval to use and explore to demonstrate some value. There's certainly some Gen AI out there that you're less concerned about. There's just nothing from like a PII perspective going in there, or even has the opportunity. It might just be creative usage and things like that. But more broadly, I think you need to set reasonable expectations for its use. You need to allow exploration to educate people and help realize the efficiencies it can provide. Like Bryan said earlier, nobody wants to be left behind, and that's the big FOMO right now is if I don't use this, what's going to happen to my job? But more so on a more optimist path there, you can begin to train people how to write prompts effectively to get the best data out of the Gen AI. You can help them understand what type of lift it can provide. And then the last piece of that, we discussed risk appetite a lot as an organization as we ventured into this space as well. All organizations are different. Some are going to be more, let it be the wild, wild west and let us utilize as much as possible. Others, financial services, insurance, conservative companies, we might be a little bit more risk averse and want to take a far more methodical approach, or maybe even just we're going to let this bake out further and wait for we're okay being laggards in this for whatever reason.
Sure.
So just a lot to consider. A lot to put in place. Again, I said it to the last response here, but being methodical in how you're addressing it. I'm not an advocate of discouraging use. I'd rather educate people and enable versus block completely. But it's all where your organization's risk appetite is as well.
Sure, super well stated. And I totally think it's okay to repeat things that you think are important. We often find kind of coming back to the same themes as we talk about these topics. Bryan, what about you? And just to give you the question one more time, just to, what policies have you put in place to enable Gen AI in your environment, and what measures should organizations be putting in place?
Yeah, so we started off with a blanket block. So to Vince's point, we took the conservative approach, and we said, because what we didn't want is to become the wild, wild west of, well, I'm using Copilot, someone else is using Google, someone else is using Grok or one of the other ones out there, and we're all using it in different ways, and it's sort of completely unregulated. So we said, all right, if you want to use AI, come to us and we'll take it into consideration and give you a thumbs up, thumbs down on a case by case basis. And for the most part, what we've done is on the creative and research side, we've been pretty wide open. So we're now using it for creating training presentations, for creating these 5-minute, anti-phishing campaigns. It's worked out really well. Our turnaround time has gone from 2 months to 2 weeks. So we've seen a tremendous improvement there in that, and how fast we can turn around training material. Now, where we've been more restrictive is on the analysis piece. So if you're going to require that you take our customer data, and that's our crown jewels, and put it into an AI, that's where we've been much more restrictive and said, yeah, no, that's really where we don't want to have that information out, either used by our internal folks or by the co-pilots or by these companies that are coming to us and saying, yeah, I can increase your ROI by 5% if you just let me analyze your data. That's where we've been more conservative. To Vince's point, I think if you, on the areas where there's not a lot of risk, we say go for it and get started and get us going. And that's going to be our use case for the future, to say, yeah, we did really well on generating these little 5-minute anti-phishing trainings. Let's use it to build our employee onboarding. Let's use it to build, the next more important thing. So it's the crawl, walk, run approach that we started on, and we'll get there where we're using it more for the analysis piece. Right now, it's more on the creativity and research side.
Yeah, and both of you mentioned things about education, as well as around kind of like the whole prompt engineering aspect. And these are two things I want to emphasize just from personal experience, or helping organizations. They might call on the Varonis IR team when they do the wrong things with Gen AI, whereas we try to get involved early and prevent that from happening. One of the mistakes I've seen made is where people assume that AIs are going to behave a certain way, and a lot of Gen AIs are non-determinative, meaning that if you give the exact same question as another person, you might get a different answer. Depending on your past experiences with that AI, it's not exactly like a one-to-one. And I think there's so much for people to learn about it, both from the what are your expectations side, but also on the prompt engineering side. And so just creating good prompts, having good conversations with a Gen AI is not the same as when you're just having a conversation with a person, or even with a search engine. And in that vein, and Vince, we'll get first with you again here. What tips do you have for other security pros that want to take the leap and start using Gen AI tools?
I think like so many things in security, we squirrel into so many things. We get enamored with new capabilities and new tools all the time in security, but we need to be good about taking a step back, being outcome driven, identify the problems you want to solve, understand if AI or AI features will have that return on investment that you're expecting, or help you solve the problem you're trying to solve. We also need to acknowledge that adding new things, adding even Gen AI, while it can offer a lift, offer efficiency, It can also add complexity. It can add maintenance. It can add additional risk compared to the value it offers. So it's important to assess the risk of the capability. From a security team specific types of tools, you're seeing Gen AI offer increased efficiency and capabilities, particularly to like SOC analysts being able to query more effectively. You're starting to see machine learning and interaction with Gen AI be able to understand the massive amounts of data and logging that we take in on security teams. Security is data at scale. It is a problem of data at scale for a lot of teams. And so AI can offer value there. Action-oriented elements for security teams, in my opinion, is still a little off. At the very least, you want a human in the loop to understand what actions AI or Gen AI can take. But properly assessing risk, being methodical in how you go about it, and most importantly, being outcome driven, knowing the problems you want to solve, and if AI can even offer to help solve that problem is how my team and our security program go about really any of most objectives we have, I should say.
Sure. And Bryan, what about you? What tips do you have for security pros that want to take the leap with Gen AI?
Yeah, so similar to Vince, I think AI is going to be an enhancement. It's going to make us more productive and cut down on the amount of time that's going to take us to do things. Again, my lesson generation is just one example of that. I think it's going to spread out to more and more things where the reaction time is going to be much faster, because now the analysis piece that would take a skilled SOC analyst 2, 3, 4 hours to do that research, it's now going to be done in 2, 3, 4 minutes. So the reaction time is just going to drop significantly, and it's going to get better. To some of the people's points that I've made in some of the comments, the question then becomes is that correct? So if I have 2 SOC analysts and one runs a report and says, yeah, that's a malicious thing, we need to turn the CEO's laptop off. Another one runs the same report and says, no, that's just him logging in because he had a conference in Vegas. Well, which one's right? There's going to be a decision there where, again, a person does need to be in the loop for making that decision, because the 2 AIs could have two different opinions, or 2 SOC analysts could have 2 different opinions, and it can all be resolved as a phone call to someone like myself to say, oh yeah, he's at a conference. So I don't think you can take a person out of the loop entirely. There's always going to be that decision there, but to get to that decision is going to be much faster with AI than without it. I think the whole right, if you're on this call right now and you're writing rules for your Splunk instance or your SIM instance, I start looking at AI a lot, because I think your job's going to go away. It's going to become 100% AI, where you don't write rules anymore. You just query the data, and the AI is going to write the rules on the fly, basically.
Yeah. Wow. And it sounds like there's just like so much for people to process if they're not as far along or as mature as your guys and your organizations are in relation to Gen AI. And so one of the things we always like to do on Data First Forum is give people some like practical tips, some things they could literally take away as homework. And so I'll give you guys each an opportunity, and then I'm going to sift through some of the other questions, because we've gotten so many questions. I want to address some of our questions from the audience as well, which is amazing. So keep them pouring in. We'll try to get to as much as possible with the time we have scheduled, everyone. But if you could give people 3 things to do as homework, you can assign a homework assignment to every single person on the call today, though we won't be following up or grading the assignments, but you can give it to them. What 3 things would you give them? And Bryan, why don't you start?
Yeah, so you're just like everything else, you got to take it from the business side of the house. The business, what do they want to do? They want to be better, faster, cheaper. So you got to find some process that you're doing and say, all right, where can I plug AI to it and make it one of those 3 things? Again, another use case, because I'll stop going back to my lesson generation one, is that we're using today is we get a lot of letters from attorneys and customers. How do you process all those letters? Because they don't have a standard format. They don't necessarily all ask for the exact same thing, but we're now giving that analysis of when those letters come in and letting AI either generate a response. It still has to be signed off by someone else. Again, we have the human in the loop, but at least all the research part of, well, what is this letter asking for? What does it want to do? What do we have to acknowledge it, or do we have to actually do something with it? AI is doing that. It's kind of like the copilots summarize this email, or summarize this document, or summarize this PowerPoint presentation. That's what it's doing for us, and then generating response. So with that process in place, that was, I think, 3 people's full-time jobs, just doing that type of work. And just because of regular turnover, we haven't had to rehire people that we would have had to go out and find replacements for, because the AI is doing that job for us. So if again, you're on this call and you're doing some kind of repetitive task that requires you to do minimal analysis, AI is coming for your job. I'm sorry to say, but that means you can go out, and you now know you can go out and take those AI classes and be the one generating the AI system for it. And I guarantee you'll be better off in the long run for it.
Sure. That's really, really valuable insights. Vince?
Yeah, fantastic points, Brian. I agree with a ton of that. It's there's been some great guidance and insights on the chat, just as that's been just flying today. A ton of questions out here. Trying to keep things as practical as possible in my 3. I think to get yourself and your teams educated in LLMs and Gen AI. You don't need to go deep on it, even just to practically understand how they operate. You don't need to go build your own RAG or anything, but understand how they work, understand what it's made of. That's going to allow yourself to and your teams to do proper due diligence, making sure you're asking the right questions and utilizing the capabilities and understanding how those capabilities work. It's going to help you evangelize to others across the business how these things operate, and help, which leads to the second one. Balancing education and exploration. You're going to want to educate your leadership, your board. You're going to want to educate your people, and you're going to want to allow them to explore, to get hands-on with the capabilities. But you want to do that in a methodical way. Wild West may work for some, but it's going to help you learn what it can and can't do. Gen AI, to use I'm kind of a very common management consulting type of firm's view of this, is you had this inflated expectations, everybody's jacked about it. You're actually starting to see to come down to that pit of despair in some of the capabilities. We're all eagerly awaiting that productivity kind of curve, but in getting there, wherever you are, it's important to understand what you're using. So balance education and exploration, number 2, and nobody likes homework. So my 3rd one's nice and easy. Have fun and use it. The more you use Gen AI, the more you realize what it can do. Even if your business is very restrictive and preventative, use it in your home life. Use it in the charities you support. Help be more creative. Whatever it is, the more you use it, the more you realize it can do, and know that there is more to come. So stay educated as well. Be intellectually curious. That's just going to help you utilize the tools to the best of their capabilities.
I love all that, and I hope that we can get all that bits summed up in our summary email that we send out after today's Data First Forum. And I've picked out a handful of questions, and just so we can try to get through as many as possible, I'm going to try to throw each of you guys just one rather than have you both answer them, and then I'll try to chime in on a couple. I think I might have some intelligent things to add on. So first, Vince, will throw this one at you. 1 or 2 things to do before adopting Copilot, specifically Microsoft Copilot.
I'll say, okay, so with the tons of different branding that Copilot has, understand what the different Copilots can do, whether it's GitHub Copilot, M365 Copilot, just general Microsoft Copilot. Understand what they can do, understand the differences between them, I think is number 1. Again, back to that education perspective. And then number 2, model those threats, kick the tires on it a little bit, test out what it can and can't do. There are there are things to watch out for in Copilot still as well. If you have poor data governance, poor access to your network folders and things like that, M365 for Copilot can still have some things that you don't want to happen there. So be cautious about that. Test effectively. That's the one or two things I would do in kind of exploring Copilot.
And the next question, Brian's going to be from you. And I hope I pronounce this audience member's name correctly. I think it's Faye Rasulian. Should Gen AI be available to everyone in an organization or restricted to just a trusted few?
I think you can make the use case for having everyone have some access to it. Now, that can just be the online web version of things, and then you rely on your DLP or other technologies to prevent your sensitive data from leaking out. But to Vince's point, see what people can do with it. It's the old, if you tell people to take a hill, they'll come with 100 different ways to do it, and one of them at least will be a really good solution. So the folks that are working in your organizations, they know what the problems are. They know where their frustration points are. They're going to be the ones that come up with something that will do a really good job for you, and allowing them to have that creativity, to have that flexibility to at least suggest it and have some chance to make the solution for themselves. I think is a great motivator to organizations to start using AI. So the first person that brought an Excel spreadsheet into the organization, they probably got ridiculed about it, and now you can't live without it. So I think that's where Gen AI is going. So if you can find that use case where you can make your life and by proxy, other people in your department's lives easier, I think it's a good thing to do. Again, just have the guardrails up to make sure things don't go too haywire.
Yeah, and I think one of the questions, just to echo that I like to ask, different managers in my organization is, how are you using it? Because maybe they don't know or they're not. It's a great way to put them on an exploration path of what could they do. And I wanted to address one of the questions that came in from Anonymous. Are there concerns about the perpetuation of inefficient code through Gen AI? And I'll take this one. Absolutely. If anyone's used Copilot for GitHub specifically, one of the prompts I'd recommend you ask as a follow-up to the first bit of code you get delivered is there a more efficient way to solve the problem that you just did? Or would there be a way to make this more efficient? Because you could potentially have that conversation several times over with the Copilot before the Copilot comes back and says, no. And at least in its own capacity, it couldn't make it more efficient. So there is a real risk of the perpetuation of inefficient code through Gen AI. But if you're up against inefficient code versus no code, I'm going to take the inefficient code because it's a starting point. Next question I want to ask is from Lejani. How important is the data classification? And I'll let either one of you can just pick which one of you guys wants to go. How important is the data classification and DLP if we're using Gen AIs like Copilot? Could you please tell us about the potential risk of accessing data that users aren't authorized to access without data classification or DLP?
I could take a quick stab at it. We actually have a question kind of related to that we chose not to do in kind of the prep of today, of just the appreciation of data security, how it's changed how people think about data security. Data classification, data governance is going to become increasingly important, particularly as you say build or utilize or tweak your own large language models and things like that. It's not an absolute must for like general Copilot usage. As you get into Copilot for M365 or GitHub Copilot, it can become increasingly important there. I think it's leading to a greater appreciation for the need for data governance, data classification, and DLP policies, which is fantastic to see. You guys sponsoring today, great platform to get you started down that journey. But it's not an absolute must for some use cases, but as you start to get into more what I would maybe consider advanced for today use cases, increasingly important there. So it all depends on what you're trying to accomplish and what your outcomes are. And again, back to that risk appetite question, what your risk appetite is.
Sure. And I'm going to do just three more questions just to set expectations for everybody, and then we're going to launch a poll to collect some feedback from our audience. So first one is, are there any particular regulatory requirements, this one's from Caroline, an organization must follow or be compliant with prior to launching AI?
Not for the US that I'm aware of, but certainly I know the European Union and certainly some of the Asian countries are starting to put regulations around that. So I would, anyone's an international organization, I would say there definitely are. I'm just not aware of them. Exactly which ones they are. We're just following our regular, US regulations that are still have some privacy requirements. And I imagine some creative lawyer down the road is going to find a way to try and sue us to say we're violating those privacy requirements by putting any information into AI. So that's why we're trying to head that off and not have that happen by not having our data populate the large language models, keeping it self-contained. But I'm sorry, look at like I said, the European Union and Asian countries are definitely having some regulations.
Sure.
Yeah, there's definitely some global regulations out there that have already kind of tuned up. Somebody actually just shared the link to the executive order. That was the other piece I was going to bring up there. There was a U.S. executive order related to the trustworthy usage of AI. State of Colorado, actually, I would put them at the forefront, whether we like it or not, about regulatory kind of principles or controls in AI as it relates to bias. And increasingly, you're starting to see some state-specific types of regulatory creep up, mostly oriented towards bias in decision making. So again, it goes back to your use cases. But yeah, California privacy laws, GDPR, I would anticipate some amendments to those, and then keep an eye out for state-specific types of things. Heck, put it in your Gen AI, ask them what kind of regulation there is, and
Yeah,
see
that's
what it spits out for
great
you.
question for your copilots. So, and are either of you using AI for security automation, and can you share what the impact has been?
Yeah,
So
early stages, just some features of our capabilities, the ability to learn and call out anomalies and things are used in some of our tools. Our EDR actually has a really good product roadmap related to their AI, Gen AI kind of use cases that they're methodically addressing. A lot of their initial use cases here have been that easier querying, being able to, and also being able to query across a wide source of data, not just the EDR. So that's kind of where we've seen some of it. And then threat intelligence summarization, risk assessment, clarity. My team's using that for some of those purposes as well.
Sure. And Brian, it sounds like you had something to add here too.
yeah, so we're a Splunk shop for our SIM. That's where all of our logs go to assemble all of our all of our security data and information. That's our security data lake. They're starting to roll out some AI around their product, and that's where I think AI is going to start to sort of fraction and splinter a little bit. Is the large language models they're currently developing are what fall into that Gen AI space. So you're using them for security and creativity and analytics and other stuff. I think someone's going to come up with Timmy or Sammy or some other name they're going to call it and say, yeah, I'll look at all your security data and come up with stuff, and it's going to be much better just looking at that one particular type of data, and that's where it's going to specialize into. Whereas the Gen AI models are good for a lot of different things. Someone's going to say, well, I'm going to use it just for security analytics, or just for stock analytics, or just for human resources analytics, and those specializations are what's going to drive the innovation in those products for the next 10 years probably.
Sure.
Of, well, mine's better than yours, or I've got more data pull from than yours, or these pooling models. Because imagine if you could take all the Splunks in all the world and then do the analytics on that type of data, how great would that be? I think it's going to get to that point where it's more specialized around certain use cases.
I just want to add too, from a Varonis standpoint, we use it for that, but a use case both of you brought up, which is automating the investigation of repetitive tasks for analysts. Like there is no need. It's 2024. You don't need to have your analysts run queries all day. Your analysts can see the results of queries run by bots and by AI. We are there. If you're not there and you're watching this, that's a great thing to start on from my perspective. One last closing question, as there have been a ton of comments, and I'll give you guys both a chance to answer this before we launch our poll, around like the hype of AI. So one anonymous attendee wants to know, they think that the AI hype cycle is starting to dip a bit, at least from the investment side. Do you guys see this as a positive trend of like a more realistic evaluation of AI? And that it's kind of doing what it's capable of, or what's your take on it from like a market and a hype perspective? I have a
Oh
feeling this
man,
person might be a financial analyst and not a
that,
cybersecurity person, but
it's a fantastic question. Oh man, I could talk for hours on this one. This is a fun topic to talk about. I do not think interest is waning in the VC world related to AI and AI capabilities. There are some groups that I'm a part of that it is very much still a hot topic. I think it is falling kind of in alignment though with just that general hype cycle where super excited, everybody, financial analysts, VCs, practitioners, everybody super excited about all it can be. You're starting to see that dip now of what it is, what it isn't, and where it still needs to grow. But from a market appetite for it, I think similar to a lot of us practitioners, you're seeing VCs and things like that start asking better questions about, how much of this is smoke and mirrors, hype, how much of this is actually working, and how is it actually working. I think there's still a lot of excitement in the market for what it can do. I think we all know that this is going to continue to get stronger and stronger, and we're going to get closer to that productivity curve, in the next couple of years here for sure.
And Brian, what about you?
I'll echo the same sentiment. The Microsofts and the Metas of the world are not investing less in AI. Again, they're still investing in the picks and shovels, which is the NVIDIAs of the world. Next is going to be the software, which again, NVIDIA is arguably a software company as well. And then it's going to be the platforms of who's going to monetize it the best, the first. Again, it could be as simple as Amazon. They serve up, instead of random ads, they serve up exactly what you're looking for. So how many times have you seen where you search something in Google and then those ads show up in your emails or other ways that Google is plugged into you? Maybe those get better. So the monetization of it has just started on it. Yeah.
I want to add one more piece, Matt and Brian. I think what I'm most excited for is when you start to see some of the practitioners, some of the organizations start to share those journeys and use cases and how it was successful for them, because that's going to lead to more exposure, more appetite for it from mid-size enterprises and others, to just have a friend in the room, not have it be a product service hype type of thing, but an actual practical application of, hey, we're X large company, and here's how we did this, and here I'm going to provide you some practical guidance in order for you to start your own journey. As soon as companies get over that competitive edge, selfishness, I'd call it, I think, and start sharing and collaborating more, you're going to start to see more people adapting it.
Yeah, and I wanted to weigh in on this one as well. So I think we're at the complete infancy of hype around AI. We are just figuring out how cool it is, where it can be used. There's a race to see who can get the first gains, not the win the battle, just the first bits of innovation. And so I don't even think we've like launched up the hype cycle yet from my perspective. And I'll draw a correlation to this from an interview recently done with Larry Ellison, the CTO over at Oracle. He said that he's so bought into AI the reason that some of the investment money is shifting from AI to other things is because he's building nuclear reactors to power the data centers that he needs to run these, quantum AI models. So I think we're still in such an early part of where this is. I'll also quote a very famous person from Varonis named David Gibson, who said that he believes that AI will actually be a bigger frontier of exploration than space. And so, a lot of people that are maybe even attending today have watched the world race into space and space travel and living on the space station. That the real next frontier for humanity is AI and how we incorporate it into our lives. And with that, I know we've got an exit poll up. All of these data first forums are based off of the feedback that we get from you, our audience. You are what makes it possible, along with our expert panelists. And so if you could just take a quick moment and fill out that feedback poll before we adjourn today, we would really, really appreciate it. And with that, I will just pass it, Bryan, first to you, then to Vince. Any closing thoughts or remarks before we say goodbye to our audience?
So when AI takes over the world and analyzes this panel, I welcome our AI overlords and want to be part of the system and not become a battery in the slave factory. So, but yeah, joking aside, I do think AI is, gonna take over in a good way. So this is the time to get out in front of it.
Just appreciate the time and some practical guidance hopefully out of this, but I love all the questions, love all the participation. Hopefully you got a few nuggets out of this. I kind of want to put my tinfoil hat on too and go into that mode, but I'd be excited about this. There's a lot of opportunity here in the space to come. Like so many of us in security, there's definitely fear and uncertainty about it. But take that enablement approach and be excited about what it can do and be at the forefront in helping your business succeed, utilizing the capabilities as they come to market.
Well, super awesome job today, guys. Like, I learned so much, so I know that our audience did as well. Thanks for everyone for their participation, and we look forward to seeing you on the next Data First Forum.